Thank you for your time in joining us. Hary, to start with you very briefly to say who you are, what you do, and why you're on this stage.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Some of you will recognise me from around the building. So I'm Hary Ashurst-Venn. I work within the fourth floor creative team, where I am Director of Digital and New Tech, which is part of Sony Music UK. So I work with all of our UK labels. The Digital and New Tech team works closely with some of the platforms that we've already mentioned today, so Meta, TikTok, Discord, Snap, Reddit, etc. So we spend a lot of our time thinking about social media, where it's headed, community platforms, etc. And then a big chunk of our time is spent trying to launch projects around exciting new technology, whether that's AI, AR, VR, anything with two letters in it. We tend to be all over that.
We'll stick to 2 letters. Laura.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I have not been here or met any of you before. I'm Laura Higgins. I'm the Senior Director of Community Safety and Civility at Roblox. I've known Jo for many, many years, so I'm delighted to be invited to be part of her BPI journey as well. As I say, I've been at Roblox about 5 years, just over now. My role there is very much about building healthy, safe, welcoming communities. So this really is my bag. Before I joined Roblox, I worked on the other side. Today is Safer Internet Day. Little shout out for that if anyone is interested. I worked at the UK Safer Internet Centre, where I set up several helplines around either digital safeguarding or violence against women and girls online, so things like intimate image abuse, and I did that for a very long time. So I'm really passionate about keeping people safe in spaces, whether it be kids, adults, women, but also, the journey through being on one side in that kind of online harms world and then looking at what we can do in the games industry has been really interesting. So I'm looking forward to digging in.
Thank you so much. And as a mother of a 9-year-old girl who would quite happily spend her entire life on Roblox, I'm very glad there's someone with digital civility in their job title. I feel deeply reassured. Just reflecting on so much of what we've covered today, I suppose it's sort of overwhelming how much ground there is to cover, but one way we might think about it is these communities in terms of fans, and Zoe, you've obviously talked a lot about the fandom and the different generational cohorts, about what it means for artists and then what it means for us in this room as the music industry. So if we could just sort of unpack a bit around those sort of 3 angles. Hary, I might start with you, thinking about from a fan perspective, how are you thinking about that fan journey from a Sony point of view?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting actually to think within the lens of community, because I think we spent a long time on these social platforms thinking about what the artist is going to broadcast to a load of people who follow them, whereas I think the equation becomes a lot more creative and interesting once you start then opening that up. The boundary changes. You're kind of, like Zoe was saying, kind of almost co-creating with a fan base, and it's almost about coming up with experiences for them that allow them to kind of come in and play, but you're not really dictating what the end result of that's going to be. You're allowing enough space for people to kind of really create their own journey. One cool project we did, Columbia Records and Fourth Floor worked together on this, was for Declan McKenna's record, What Happened to the Beach, which is out this week. So we created a 2D beach for his community. We first asked them, hey, if you were to find Declan McKenna's beach, what would be on it? So we had this huge list of items. We created this 2D beach with some developers. We put all of those items beneath the sand so people could walk around as a little tiny Declan. They had 5 chances to dig per day, so they couldn't use them all. And we kind of designed it with community in mind. We didn't want it to be like a single player experience where you go and do your thing, you find everything, and then you leave and you never return. Instead, it was about like people talking to each other, like, what did you find with your 5 searches? And then we started sprinkling in new track titles from the album that the fans didn't know. So once they started to uncover those, there was this huge moment of excitement in the community. It happened at like 1 o'clock in the morning UK time, so people were atting each other furiously, calling each other because they ran out of searches. So they were like, right, we need to get more people on right now to search so we can find all the album titles, which is just like, I feel like that is something that I can't imagine happening like on maybe a kind of Web 2 social platform. It's kind of need that boundary to be shifted a little bit.
Amazing. So how's that changing for you in day to day, how you're thinking about fans or fan groups?
I think it's just it's thinking about the design of the experiences and how you communicate. It's acknowledging that people they are connected via their personal networks, but actually they want to be connected by interests as well. They want to kind of geek out over something together on the internet. That's, something that we've been doing since the birth of the internet, but I think there's a real sustained kind of moment for that right now. So it's giving them enough space to do that. RCA did a great project around Nothing But Thieves, where they launched this thing called the MBT ID. So you come to the Nothing But Thieves website that they built for Dead Club City, which was their record that had this whole kind of lore and myth around it, and you get your ID, and that's the thing that actually lets you through the gateway into the website to then discover exclusive content, all this other cool stuff that you can just go away and geek out about. And I think it's kind of almost like creating those little gateway experiences that people can kind of go down the rabbit hole through.
Laura, from your perspective, what do you see in Roblox about what works in attracting fans to these communities?
So Roblox is interesting and complicated, and I think Zoe set us up really well with kind of that really great explanation of what metaverses look like. And I think, we were widely discussed as a metaverse platform. So people want different things from different experiences, even within Roblox. So we can't just think about Roblox as one thing. Roblox is many things. People will go to a fashion show and buy high-end fashion items now. I never thought that would happen when I first started working there. Equally, they'll go and play a first-person shooter, and they'll be doing the same thing, but they'll also be hanging out with their friends that they go to school with, or the people that they've met online. And definitely the whole music and entertainment side of things has just gone absolutely interstellar. So obviously there are certain expectations in terms of having a platform that is safe. Table stakes stuff, having the ability to control your own experience, whether that's for your privacy journey, the safety elements, us making sure that we maintain that safety. And it doesn't matter. Our fastest growing demographic, by the way, is 17 to 24. They still have the same expectations of safety and civility that a parent would for their 9-year-old. And so for us, that's where our integrity is. So there's that basic thing. But what the 17 and 18-year-olds want is to have a more adult experience within that safe framework. And so that's, I think, when we're looking at communities, that's one of the base things, is us as a tech company really respecting those community needs, then giving them the ability to have whatever they want as their community. So whether it be interactive spaces where they go and hang out and they play and they listen to music in a concert, whether it be having private servers where they can do that on their own, whether that be we have groups where they can very much that kind of, we have huge LGBTQ plus communities, we have really big neurodiverse communities, and actually they like to go hang out even if they play different experiences on the platform.
Thank you. And Zoe, I was really struck by what you talked about in terms of different experiences and the ways in which those different generational shifts are happening. Bearing that in mind, what if you could boil it down to one thing, what do you think the biggest lesson takeout for the music industry is from what you've talked about today, from a fan perspective?
Multiplayer dynamics. I think that's the most important thing. We're starting to see it everywhere at the moment. So we've got obviously the Nike.swoosh thing that I mentioned, but we've also got Lego, with Lego Worldbuilder. It's been around for a couple of years now. And what Lego are doing is essentially going out to fans and saying, you guys create our next IP. And they're giving them really clear briefs with really clear parameters and basically saying, we want a fantastical franchise that's able to be a video game and also a physical set. You guys come up with stuff, and then the cream gets voted to the top. And if that idea then gets created, they will then get an equity stake in what that looks like moving forward. And so one of the most recent releases that's come out of that is the Cullen house from Twilight. So it might sound really weird. And I actually didn't know this because I read Twilight and I was a bit of a Twilight geek, but I didn't know that the house that the Cullens live in is some sort of architectural masterpiece which is super famous, and that's actually why they put it in the film. So when a fan actually suggested the Cullen house for the next creation, it actually brought together two fandoms, which was the Twilight kind of twihards, but also the people who really respect architecture. And so that idea rose to the top in terms of community voting because it's what the fans want. And that is now being made into a set, and the person that came up with that idea is going to get an equity stake in that moving forward. And, we're going to see it more and more with kind of music remixes, with clothing. H&M have just released an kind of AI-infused clothing label. So you can go onto this thing, it's infused with Stable Diffusion, and you can create any hoodie that you want, any color, any artwork, and you can get it 3D printed and sent to your house. And so everything is moving in that direction, which is basically saying that you have the infrastructure, you have the resources, as a brand and as a business, but actually what you need to give people is the freedom and the autonomy and the agency to kind of do their own thing. And I think that's what's going to get really exciting.
So if we move on to sort of think about what it means for musicians, for artists, Hary, I might start with you again. From the label and the Sony perspective, how are artists thinking about this, and how are you working with artists in how they are thinking about and bringing some of these communities to life for them?
I think every experience has to be in complete partnership with the artist, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to show up and be on the platform or even a platform native. But I think it's about understanding that when an artist creates an album, they create a world, whether that's through the music videos, through the album cover, press photos. Like, there is a huge visual world that an artist creates around music. And I think the exciting thing that we can do is to actually go and meet them there and expand that vision even larger than the thing that they had created on their canvas. So one example being the George Ezra Roblox experience that we launched a little while back. It was Columbia UK and Fourth Floor Creative again collaborated on that one. And really that was taking, so on the front cover of his album Gold Rush Kid, you've got George with his back to the camera, and then you've got this kind of bucolic landscape behind him, and it's almost kind of like diving into the picture and then designing that for Roblox into this space that fans want to come and be part of. And then it's gamifying that, so there's quests, challenges that you can do inside that world. And then we had the weekend where we had the concert there as well. And I think the really interesting thing about that is we had an enormous amount of people come to the concert and come and do all of that stuff across that weekend. 3.6 million people, loads of conversation, loads of people acquiring the things in the game. But actually since then, I think it's almost doubled in usage. So people are actually coming back, even though we're not remarketing it. The concert it's no longer the concert weekend, but it's a space that fans wanted to come and inhabit. They want to come and do the quests and be part of that world. And I think that's something where artists want to build the world, fans want to be in it, and I think kind of we want to just be the facilitators for that experience, really.
And I guess, picking up on what Zoe was talking about in terms of just the range of different ways of building those communities for different artists, different genres, different fan groups, how are you thinking about how you kind of tailor and flex the right experience for that artist and the kind of fan engagement they're trying to create?
I think you have to treat each fan group differently, have a look at who the makeup of that group is, what they're interested in, what they love about the artist, and also speak their language, be really authentic. The Declan McKenna one again, there were lots of in-jokes in the items. There were we wanted to give room for that so that it's not just us kind of dictating to the fan, his kind of fan base, what the experience was, but it's actually doing that in partnership. So I think it's always about listening to the fans, spending time really knowing who that audience is, which our insight team in Fourth Floor do a great job of looking into that. That's always the start point for us. It's here's the audience, here's the stuff they love, here's the stuff they love about the artist, how can we make that bigger and really exciting for them? And
Laura, from an experiential and a kind of safety point of view, what do artists need to be thinking about, and how are you working the platform to make this work for artists? What works well, what doesn't, I guess?
So I think age appropriateness is always a challenge, because when you have that breadth of different artists and different needs, I think just being thoughtful about what's appropriate. We did have a quite funny scenario with Zara Larsson, who did a live Q&A after her performance. It was absolutely phenomenal, and then she kind of forgot that most of the people there were 9 to 13, and she used a bit of bad language. Hey, it made it go viral very, very quickly, and to be fair, there was no real harm done, and it was a really good opportunity for us to kind of say to the parents, hey, this is this artist who, she is known for her fruitiness and she's quite upfront. So, so there's those sorts of things just to consider. Also, just remembering that your community doesn't just stop where you are. So, for example, you as, okay, we have this artist and our demographic is generally this, and at the moment you're reaching them maybe through YouTube, maybe through a concert even. But actually, like for us, when we have an artist on Roblox, our community is everywhere. They are on Discord, they are on Twitch, they are using YouTube, they are on Twitter, X, and actually just trying to have that duty of care for that community. Is if you build the community, you have to look after them. You can't just go, oh well, once they're off Roblox, it's not my problem. So we see it as like our responsibility to help give them those kind of digital literacy skills. It sounds really boring, but actually helping them build resilience, recognizing risk and harm. They take that off our platform and they still have those skills when they go somewhere else. And I think that's a really vital thing. It sounds so obvious, but people don't think about it. But having a good time and feeling welcome and having those safe spaces is so important. It is to us as adults, it is to kids. So really thinking about, it's not just about having community standards, rules in place and us kind of, making sanctions if people break the rules. It's actually the bit you do before that. It is about those welcoming spaces, thinking about the diversity. And when we think about the music industry and how diverse that is, we need to sort of bear that in mind in all the spaces that community goes.
And Zoe, is there any more you would add in terms of what works, what doesn't, from the way in which artists are interacting in these spaces?
I think just, artists kind of painting the picture of the world, but not dictating it. So, I love the kind of organic stuff that happened around Nicki Minaj and Pink Friday 2, for example, which was 1 month ago. And she's created this idea of, Pink City. And Pink City is like this kind of really in-your-face, bright pink Gotham City style space, and she's kind of created this idea in kind of her fans' minds, and her fans are called the Barbs. And when Pink City 2 was coming out, the album Pink Friday 2, they all kind of jumped into Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, Midjourney, and they created this kind of weird collective story of, everyone arriving in Pink City, waiting for the album to drop. So they created these kind of images and posters, and it was like the cast of Succession have landed in Pink City. Batman and Superman are outside the Pink City town hall. And it was just unbelievably wonderful to kind of watch all of these people have their own individual contribution to this collective imagining of what this world looks like. So I think the idea of kind of an artist setting the tone and giving the narrative arc and the vision, but then leaving it open, I think is really interesting. Like one artist that I really wish had gone a bit deeper, and she hasn't yet, but she may do, is Janelle Monáe. So Janelle Monáe, from the very beginning, has been writing about this kind of Afrofuturism world, and she's a character within it, to such an extent that she's actually written a novel, which came out a few months ago, all about this kind of this narrative that she's created. But I've not really seen her bring it to life in any persistent space, and I would love to see that kind of stuff. So I think more and more artists are really thinking about what is the narrative arc, what is this kind of world idea that they have in their mind, but then leaving it open for fan contribution and interpretation.
Laura?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. So one of my favourite experiences, I know I shared this with you the other day, was from Elton John. We were very surprised when I was in a team meeting and they were like, so Elton John's going to have an experience. And I'm like, really? But his kids play Roblox and he really loves that experience, and he plays them apparently on the platform. Yes, us. But he was just doing the final tour, and he said, I want somewhere where I can have my music, my clothes, everything curated in one place and really leave a legacy. So he worked with quite a young developer team as well. The experience is absolutely amazing. Go visit it. It's called Beyond the Yellow Brick Road. And you can it is just such a beautiful, warm, welcoming place. It celebrates diversity and fashion. And you can be Elton and you can listen to his tunes and you can wear his sunglasses. It's very entertaining. But it's just such a lovely example. And he actually recorded a video for our developer community at our Roblox developer conference. And it was just so real to see an artist who was like, this really mattered to me and I wanted to make this happen. It was him leading it, but it's such an interactive thing. And so, yeah, I think that's a lovely example. And like you, I'd love to see much more of that.
And I'm hearing a lot of sort of artist-led, artist control, and that authenticity kind of comes right out in everything in you're saying. I guess we are here to talk about how this impacts the music industry. So we've talked about artists and fans, obviously very much part of how the industry works and adapts. Laura, if we think about kind of what does the music industry need to do? How do we need to think differently? What are we getting right? What do you think at an industry level we really need to be thinking about?
I'm going to be quite harsh, but you need to really respect your community.
It can't just be all nice stuff.
Yeah, you've got to really respect your community a bit more than you do. The delight for me moving into particularly the games industry is just how much, it's not about us. It is about the community. Without them, we have nothing. And I think, like you were saying about that kind of passive, we intake music. That's old-fashioned now. That's not where we're going to be. That's not where we need to be. So I think, just be in your community. Find out what they want. Try to adapt with that and grow with it. It's not just about promoting your artists. It is about, yes. And the thing is, the reality is this is still really valuable in a commercial way. People who are having a good time will come back. They will spend more money. They will bring other people to those spaces. So, it's a bit of a no-brainer for me. But, you need to just get out there and build those communities in a really meaningful way. Like you said, this is not the passive. This is about the truly engaged, and let them lead a little bit as well.
And are there other practical things as an industry we need to think about in terms of that safety piece? It's sort of easy to think, well, the platform's got that sorted, but for us in music, are there any other takeaways? Yeah,
so work with the expert partners that are out there. I'm lucky, even at Roblox, we still work with organisations who, for example, mental health and well-being, or suicide and self-harm is a huge thing, and we know some music artists, we've had losses over the last few years, and they really impact their fan base. So actually, even just having advice about, if you feel really bad, Netflix have just done an amazing campaign, which is like, if you are affected by some of these, stories in our programs, there is help out there. So even just doing those things, I think, is really important. Put the money into these things as well. It's not just something you can go, we're all about online safety, and then not actually put your money where your mouth is. I think that's really important. And actually vet the platforms that you're using as well, because some are better than others.
And Hary, how is this changing the way the structure and the ways in which the industry is working? I guess thinking particularly in how you're kind of measuring impact and engagement. How are these worlds changing the way in which the industry is thinking about success, impact, reach, and those sort of traditional metrics?
Yeah, I think we're moving from a time where we've got quite almost 2D metrics that we've been looking at, things like likes or a follow, or even things like watch time if you dive a bit deeper. It feels like those are all things that are actually really quite easy to figure out how to game and manipulate, and make sure that all of that stuff is going up. When you start thinking about communities, I think we've had to really relearn what success metrics we want to use in these places, whether it's community participation rate, do a lot of looking at that, like, okay, so there's X number of people within the community, how many of them have participated this week? What does participation look like? Is that someone sending a message? Is that someone reacting or sending an emoji? And is that a positive interaction? Is it a negative experience? So it's got a lot more kind of dimensions to it that I think you have to interrogate quite closely. Like, we want fans to show up and have a good time, but I think when it comes to a space where they're all interacting with each other, all of a sudden there's a lot that you have to think about around making sure that that's happening, and also making sure that it looks successful, it feels successful, and we're able to tell that story, like, internally to our business, etc. Even, when we're looking at Roblox, we're looking at things like how many people have gone and acquired this item by doing this challenge today, and then you've got the kind of upvotes, downvotes. Like, all of this stuff is like slightly new to us when we're like looking away from, say, your traditional social media platforms, and a lot of it is around, like, are people having a good time, which I don't think we've really asked enough, and it's nice that we're asking that now.
Zoe, is there anything you want to add in terms of that kind of that super fan experience and how you see that shifting the business model of the industry?
Yeah, I think it's not another media channel, and it's not part of a campaign. And I think that's how we've been taught to think about music marketing, or any marketing really. It's basically conveyor belts. We chuck a campaign up into the air, we put some assets out, people watch it, we go on to the next thing. But what you're building with community is something that is persistent. It's kind of fans that want to stay there for a really long time. It is reciprocal relationships. It's mutual value creation. And being totally honest, like we don't really have the skill sets for that because we haven't practiced it. And we're still looking at media metrics, as Hary was saying as well. So I think we almost need to kind of think of this as a separate thing, or a separate kind of channel or platform that we're building. And we need to be able to build the skill sets and the strategy for that internally, but it is ongoing. It's not kind of tentpole spikes of campaigns. And that's what makes it both hard, but also really interesting as well. And I think if we can get that right, it makes, such a massive difference. But I don't think it's something that we, again, really understand. I've heard, because I've been talking about community for the last couple of years, it's now started to kind of go into creative agencies and media agencies, but the way they talk about it is still completely misunderstanding it.
So is there any sector that is, we're talking about games and music here, is there any other sector, and you obviously work with lots, that's ahead of the game here, or are we all feeling our way, or is there somebody else we should be talking to who's got,
I think
got a better idea of this?
Toys are really interesting. So I think, I've mentioned Lego. So Lego have obviously got Lego Worldbuilder. They've also got Lego Ideas. They've also just recently revamped their loyalty program. So it's kind of bringing lots of different threads into one space. I think what Mattel are doing with Mattel Creations is fascinating. So Mattel Creations is a completely separate website purely for Mattel fans. And they've got 3 IPs in there at the moment. They've got Barbie, Monster High, and the car one that I've completely forgotten about. But it's adult fans. You can only go in there if you're actually paying a subscription to be a fan. You get access to stuff that nobody else has. So all the Barbie fans got access to Barbie movie merch that nobody else could get. You've got the likes of Kith, for example, that have just relaunched their loyalty program, which is super interesting. So I think there are brands that are doing it in different spaces. I think kind of fashion, a little bit of gaming and toys are kind of the way to look at it at the moment. But there's some really interesting lessons to learn in there.
Laura?
So when we were doing the prep for this session, we had a discussion about longevity. Obviously, I've just mentioned the Elton John experience and the fact he wanted that to be a legacy, and therefore he's willing to keep it fresh, but it's still just the life that he's had. It's not like there's going to be a new release every couple of months to keep it interesting. He trusts that people will still find it entertaining and want to go back there and listen to his tunes. So that's one thing. Really, you do need to think, if you're going to go into this space, the respect the community thing is sometimes it's perfectly okay to dip your toe in and go, hey, community, we are doing a concert, or we have got an album launch, and let's have a party. But you need to be really clear what's going to happen afterwards. Exactly, literally straight after our meeting the other day, there's an amazing experience called Sol de Janeiro, which is all about self-esteem, well-being. It's a great experience, and I was like, I'm going to go talk about this experience. This is not how I wanted to talk about it. It's only available through February. Why go to the effort of creating this? And it is immense, and it feel good. It's like, okay, but at least they've told us that it's finishing in February, which they don't quite often even communicate that with Roblox and the developer team. I can imagine the team that built this thing are absolutely devastated that they put so much work and effort, because it's not just about being paid, but they have already built up this fan base who are really enjoying this experience and are about to have it ripped from them. When it's a music artist that they absolutely love, there is a level of responsibility of either being like, this is a time finite thing, or we are building a community and you will be able to have your town square and hang out with your friends, and we will do our best to keep it going. And I do think there needs to be some thought around that.
Okay, Leon's giving me the 1 minute sign. This is obviously called Lessons from Games. Just really briefly, I would love if you could share a thought on what music can teach everybody else. What are we great at in music that others can learn as lessons from us? Zoe, I'll put you on the spot first.
The idea of a collective experience. And I think that that's one of the things that we've seen massively over the last year with Taylor Swift Era's tour, and also Beyonce as well, and the ability for people to kind of really come together and congregate. And I think if we can translate that into virtual spaces and virtual communities as well as the physical, that's a really powerful thing that music does that other people can learn from.
Laura?
it should be fun. Let's keep it about being fun. So there isn't always that much fun with music, but actually when you put the music and the games together, it really does become fun.
And Hary, you've been our generous host today, and you are here, you are music. What can everyone learn from us?
I'm still a big believer in the purity of artistic vision. I think music's amazing because quite often you have one person or 4 people creating this thing really intensely, and there's always less people involved than on a film or a game or something like that. So you do get this hugely pure vision, and I think that's something that is really exciting and really kind of interesting to then amplify to the world. So I think that's one thing that music does in a really special way.
Brilliant. That feels a very good place to end. So between this and a drink, hopefully do stay, network, have a bite to eat, have something to drink. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to our fantastic panel and all our speakers. Thanks so much.